Committee member Sellers, I sent you an email. Would you please take a look at that when you have a moment?
Okay, so that'll be when we discuss the.
Yes.
Okay.
So now we're going to pivot to the mailing A.
Sorry, I missed that. We're going to pivot to what now?
We're going to pivot to general administration. You're in the right spot. Just a couple of announcements, and then we'll go into mailing A with our SMEs who are also on the call.
Okay, so we will begin with an update from staff member Runyon regarding appointments and opportunities. Staff member Runyon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, staff member Runyon. So there are a couple of reappointments. Committee member Gibler is reappointed effective date 4/1/2025 through 3/31/27. And then committee member Hammond, same effective date, 4/1/2025 through 3/31/2027. So we'd like to take a moment to congratulate committee members Gibler and Hammond on their reappointment to the PHPFAC. The governor reappointed both members recently, and their terms are extended again through March of 2027. Although committee member Myers did not seek reappointment, his work is not done. He's committed his time to the Oregon Academy of Family Physicians, or the OAFP. So thank you, members Gibler, Hammond, and Myers, for your continued support, dedication to this important work, and for volunteering your time. And we ask the committee, please help spread the word that we are now accepting applications for the open physician member, and folks can apply on the board website under the opportunities link.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. Congratulations, and congratulations to Dr. Myers for moving on to another great opportunity. Make sure you ask all your physician friends, Dr. Myers. Just kidding. We can all take part in that and the recruitment efforts. So we will now discuss mailing A, draft of preventative care non-acute anaphylaxis protocol, and we'll welcome our subject matter experts, Crystal Sharp and Rob Nutt. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Crystal. So why don't, Crystal, you absolutely, that's, I was going to say, which one is going to start here? And I would ask you to please start. So there we are.
All right, thanks, Rob. Good morning, everyone. My name is Crystal Sharp. I'm a community pharmacist, and I'm excited to talk today about non-acute anaphylaxis. This is something that me and Rob have been working on for probably over a year. So we're excited to get your input on the protocol. Rob, do you want to start out with kind of like some background as to why you think that this protocol is so vital, and talk about specifically in your practice setting, how this could really streamline patient care?
Absolutely. First of all, I want to, and thank you, board members, for taking the time to listen to this request. First of all, Crystal's being she's not taking enough credit. She did all of this work. I mean, I contributed in the portion of the need for it, but she did all the background work. As far as the history of epinephrine and the importance of it, is that my belief is that this is a bit of an appendix as far as a hang on from an earlier time. In the past, and if you look at the current rules now, which I'll spare you from reading off all the laws, I'm sure that you're familiar with it. But right now, as it stands, if for a patient to receive epinephrine, they can either get an order from it from their doc, or, and the part this is we're discussing right now, is they can actually they can go on and get a authorization to receive this medication through a certificate. I practiced retail for a while. Right now I work with the Oregon Department of Corrections, and I'm the chief pharmacy there, and have been for, I've been working with the Department of Corrections for the last 23 years. And this medication is one of those medications that is used, that is a life-saving or potentially life-saving medication, right, for prophylaxis, that is basically being restricted to use for those patients that are able to jump on or have access to, or even have the computer literacy to be able to find it and jump on to be able to get that authorization and kind of receive a certificate of authorization, which in all of my time in pharmacy, I've only seen that ticket twice. And it looks like a little gold ticket, at least the older ones did, that is handed to a pharmacist and says, hey, I'm authorized to get epinephrine. And the pharmacist takes a pen, writes on the back of it, date and everything, dispenses it appropriately, writes an order for it, and gives that certificate back to the patient. In this day and age, that is a dated way of looking and in a practice of pharmacy, where in fact, who better suited to educate, which is really the idea on the Oregon Health Authority for giving the ability to get that certificate of authorization, who better to educate than a pharmacist, and readily accessible as well. And you don't even have to be horribly computer literate. In fact, the access to it would improve it so much more. So looking at it, and with an equity lens, looking at it a little syndemically, this opens it up so much more to serving more Oregonians. And where we have had issues as well, specifically with the Oregon Department of Corrections, and I don't want to speak just for the corrections, I'm speaking to agencies as a whole that need access to this. The pharmacist is able to dispense epinephrine basically once we train off all those people at that individual agency, but we have to actually still have them fill out all those forms and everything, when the pharmacists themselves should be able to educate those individuals through this work that Crystal has put together, and be able to convey that information, record it, and have prescriptive authority. It's no different than a lot of the other prescriptive authority that the pharmacists already have access to. This one probably be even more important. I look at it as vaccines, which pharmacists already prescribe and administer now, are a preventative measure for improved health. Epinephrine is similar in that regard, although that can be argued that that's a poor analogy. I don't think that it so much is. Access to the medication right now is antiquated and restrictive. By giving it to a pharmacist, being able to provide that education and being able to prescribe it, we could potentially save lives on this. I could speak more to that if there was questions on it, but I'd like to hand this back to Crystal. I hope I was fairly articulate. I stumbled a bit, but for the most part, I feel pretty strongly about how the pharmacist could interact and provide this very valuable service. Please, Crystal.
All right, thanks, Rob, for giving some background. Please interrupt me if anyone has any questions for Rob, but I'm just going to move on into the documents that we have. So thank you, Gary, for pulling up the first document. So this is really the cover page of our protocol. Every protocol has something very, very similar to this. Thank you, Rachel, for making note that we do need to update that law to the most current one. I appreciate that. And then as we move through there, I didn't put page numbers for the documents in case if things did get modified, those might change, but ultimately those will need to be updated at the end. For prescribing parameters, and we'll probably talk a little bit more as we get into the meat of the protocol, but we didn't have any limitations in this protocol as presented for quantity or refills, just because if we have an entity that is requesting this medication, we didn't want to limit the amount that they were able to be provided. And
Hey,
then,
Crystal, can I
yes.
just interrupt you really quick? This is Committee Member
Sure.
Sellers. Committee Member Virgin had a quick question, I think, before you move on.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Committee Member Virgin. This is Committee Member Virgin. Just had a couple of questions. I appreciate the statement from our SMEs here. I agree in that making this more widely available will save lives. And so I appreciate the work that has gone into this. The question that I had was surrounding insurance coverage. Does insurance cover when this is pharmacist dispensed, or does it need a prescription?
So I can make an analogy to what we do for hormonal contraception. So we are able to basically charge very small visit fee for the patient to pay out of pocket, but we do bill their insurance for the actual medication dispensed. So I would anticipate that this would likely be very similar to that. And the same kind of concept does apply with naloxone as well. So we are billing patients insurance for the medications that we are providing prescriptions for.
Thank you. That answers my question.
All right. And then I did have a comment here. Essentially, I was debating some of our protocols, some of our more, I don't want to say intensive protocols, but like our travel medicine protocol or other protocols do have specific training requirements that the pharmacists need to undergo prior to being eligible to use the protocol to prescribe medications. But for this protocol, I felt strongly that that probably was not necessary, unless if anyone has any additional input. But that was the rationale for that comment.
Sorry,
And we can always
can I
circle
just
back.
jump in real quick? I just wanted to point out, and I don't know because I don't know the answer, but that there is actually a specific statute that allows for well, it's not for pharmacists, but basically there's a specific statute for contraceptive drugs. So I'm not sure it's a great analogy to say if whether or not it could be covered by insurance. I just want to like put that out there that there's a statute that specifically says a health benefit plan must pay pharmacy claims for reimbursement of all contraceptive drugs available for over-the-counter sale that are approved. So I'm not sure how it works exactly in that, but Gary might know. But I just want to point out that that might not be the best analogy because I know for sure in that there is a specific statute for that. But Gary might be able to speak to that too.
Staff Runyon, there's so much heterogeneity in terms of requirements for private payers. I really wouldn't have any specific comment that I think is universally applicable enough to be of any value. Maybe, Courtney, if you're out in the retail environment or anyone else is, kind of stepped away from that. I'm not aware of any broad barriers to coverage for pharmacists using their own credentials to bill, but perhaps someone else would be able to speak to that. Aside from OHP, of course, there are certain providers that either don't recognize pharmacists as providers or would require registration with that entity in order to pay for claims submitted on their behalf. But other than that, I don't have anything to add.
This is Committee Member Anderson. And I'm not necessarily practicing in the community either, but I will say that a big point of why the PFAC even has been doing a lot of the protocols that we have is so that they can prescribe certain things in order to get the pharmacy benefit to cover them. So if you look at a lot of the protocols that we have under this committee, there are things like cough and cold type things, and even like spacers and, on the formulary that have devices. And the reason for that is so that we can prescribe them in order to get insurances to cover them. So, and I agree with Gary that there may not be like 100% approval of all of that, but by and large, the pharmacy benefits do cover a lot of the things that the pharmacists are able to prescribe for.
This is committee member Gibler, and that's why I appreciate there's some flexibility in what you can prescribe here. So if something's not on formulary, which is likely, like with the new Neffy, which is quite expensive, it may not be on formulary, or might not be for like under the Oregon Health Plan, it's non-preferred. But there's several other options that are listed in this protocol that are preferred. So that gives the pharmacist a lot of flexibility to find something that gets covered.
And I would also like to comment, this is Rob Nutt, exactly what committee member Andrew Gibler said regarding the flexibility of it. That's why it's so important, because I think that what committee member Virgin said regarding this is, yeah, I mean, if it's going to cost you $300 for an EpiPen, well, that's great that you have access to it, but you really don't have access to it, especially when I was just referring to maybe people that don't have all that, the literacy and the ability and access, right? But this allows the pharmacist to be able to work with the patient and their plan to be able to prescribe what works best for the patient, and to be able to provide product-specific educational material to that patient.
Crystal, this is
Excellent.
Rachel. If you are we ready to resolve this comment? Then did the committee agree? No additional training. I'm just going to resolve this, and just let me know when you're ready for your H2.
Okay. If no one else has any comments, I'm ready, but thank you.
It's their patient intake form.
Okay. So this is our patient intake form. This is the form that a patient would fill out if they are requesting a prescription for epinephrine. So this, the top part is just demographic information that you guys have likely seen on other protocols if you've been on this committee. So I'm not going to read every single thing. I think something that is important to know under patient information is the bottom line, medication end user information. So here we have the person filling out, they can either attest that this is for themselves, a known end user, so that would likely be a child or one of their dependents, or an unknown end user, and that would ideally be an entity like a school or a correctional facility that's requesting the medication to be kept on hand. And then as we continue down, there's some more information that the patient will fill out. So their gender, if they're female, they'll know if they're pregnant, breastfeeding, unknown, because again, if an entity is requesting this information, they might not know who the end user will be. We will be asking the weight. So there is a open-ended question there. And then again, if there is an entity that is unsure who the end user is, and then they would likely know what category their patient population would fit under. So if it was a preschool or, a kindergarten, they would likely select the appropriate weight. If we're talking about a correctional facility, we would not have children, so they would, pick the appropriate weight based on what they would be seeking.
Crystal, committee member Gibler has his hand up.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, committee member Gibler. Thank you, Smee Sharp. I'm always looking for opportunities to streamline and simplify. If there's a way, as we're looking at the screening tool, to remove anything that's not going to determine whether epinephrine is prescribed or not, or referred, can we remove it? For example, we have questions below in the protocol about breastfeeding, medical conditions, current medications, but there's no decision based off of that information. That doesn't determine whether epi is prescribed or not. So is that necessary? I know we're pharmacists, we love to be complete, but I'm not sure if it's needed. And so maybe just understand more about why you put that in there and if that's necessary or not.
Yeah, thank you for the comment. I do agree that less can oftentimes be more, and I would rather not burden the pharmacist with collecting too much information if we don't need to and it's not impacting their medical decision. So yeah, I do agree that for some of these we may be able to remove them, such as the breastfeeding component, or the medical condition component likely could be removed.
Staff Member Runyon, got a quick question kind of along those lines. Right above the medication end user information, we have any allergies to medications listed, yes, no, and then out to the right, if yes, please list. But then under medical conditions, we also have known allergies and a place to list those as well. So I wasn't sure if there was an opportunity maybe to streamline this particular part and getting rid of one of those, whether up top or in the box there.
Yes, I did not realize I had that twice, so thank you for pointing that out. If we could remove one of them, I think probably the first one would be better to remove. The second one has a little bit more space.
Thank you. And Staff Member Runyon, one more thing. I'm not sure in the weight box, Rachel, there on the right, we have weight, a blank, and then it says select pounds, kilograms, but then underneath that, kilograms is on the left and pounds is on the right. Just for consistency's sake, it might be easier to keep all of them, the unit of measure consistent on the left and right. Just a suggestion. Take it.
Yes, if you don't mind changing that, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
This is Committee Member Gibler. I just would like a little bit more discussion from other committee members around whether we can remove breastfeeding, whether we can remove medical conditions, whether we can remove current medications, including prescription over-the-counter herbals and supplements. I'm not too concerned about allergies because that has to be inputted. I think that has to be in most systems needs to be in place anyway. But if those do not direct the pharmacist in any meaningful way, whether to prescribe or not, I would recommend just removing it just for ease and simplification.
This is Committee Member Anderson. I'm in agreement with that. I like that idea, getting rid of some of those.
Committee Member Sellers, I'm also in agreement with that.
This is Committee Member Wickenhagen, mostly in agreement, but I do think that it should be stated on there what allergy is requiring of the epi. So for instance, if it's, legumes or what have you. So just so that's clear, but outside of that, I don't need to know that they have hypertension.
Okay, so Staff Member Melman, sounds like we have consensus to strike breastfeeding, medical conditions, and current medications. Does that sound correct?
This is Committee Member Anderson. I'm mostly correct. I think what Sarah was trying to mention is having a little bit more specificity around what allergy the epinephrine is being prescribed for. So is there a way to be a little bit more clear about that, either where we're asking for known allergies, or maybe we could change the medical conditions part to being allergies needing the use of epinephrine?
or this is committee member Gibler, leaving the any allergies to medications, yes, no, up on top, putting that back in place, and then under known allergies, like just known reason for requesting epinephrine, or I don't know, some sort of background information. Is that necessary? I mean, sometimes this is, the end user may not be known, but I mean, I don't think anyone, I'm not sure if someone's going to be requesting it because they got a stomach ache to some bad food poisoning and think they need epi for the future, but it's possible, I guess someone could do that. And the pharmacist would just correct them.
This committee member Anderson, here's just a hypothetical, but what are our thoughts? I'm guessing we're going to keep this to just being prescribing for people that need it for a medical indication. But I do know that there are groups out there like physicians that like to, of course they can prescribe for themselves, but like, I'm just kind of curious what the thoughts are on, you know, prescribing epinephrine for somebody who wants to have it on hand in case an emergency happened. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like entities can request
Yeah,
it.
yeah, exactly, like
Schools.
firefighters or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, I'm guessing we keep it to people that just need it for medical conditions, but thought I'd throw that out there while we're talking.
If I may, this is Rob Nutt. Currently, as long as they go to, and I'm not saying that we can't improve on the process, but currently, all that they have to do right now is make certain that they take the training from OHA. They get the training, and once they got the training on it, they get an authorization for a certificate for authorization to receive. So it's a little broad as it stands right now. It's just that the access is so restricted. So, I mean, to really claim that we need the medical condition on, or why are you using this? I'm not saying that's a bad idea, because it's like you can always improve on processes. But there's always the element too that a couple of you have already brought up, that it's the medical condition isn't always going to be known, especially like, for instance, my main use of epinephrine and the way that we use it in the agencies. I don't know who's going to receive it. The biggest part that I need to make certain of is that the person that's going to be using it, administering it, is trained appropriately and knows when to use it and for what conditions to use it for. And that is the importance of the education from the pharmacist, to share that information.
This is committee member Gibler. That's fair enough. I appreciate that, and I'm okay not needing to know the reason why someone's requesting epinephrine. I don't think that's going to make a difference, but I'd entertain other ones. Anyone else may have an idea.
Committee member Myers.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit contradictory. I mean, if we're going to part of the process of prescribing epinephrine is the educational piece, which is what I keep hearing is really important. Well, how do you educate somebody if you don't know what they're treating it for? Right? I mean, it's not just here's epinephrine, good luck. It's okay, hey, this is a serious condition. What do you how do you warn people that you have a peanut allergy if you're in a setting where somebody's cooking food for you? How do you pay attention to that? Who do you talk to? It just, to me, it makes sense to, if we're going to be educating people, have some sort of concept about what it is that they're reacting to, so that we can help guide them into a safe space.
And I would mostly agree with your statement, committee member Meyer. The thing that is that oftentimes I'm educating right now, or talking to correctional officers and who are going to be administering it to a work crew person that out there that might got stung by a bee. But it's valuable what you're saying on that. I mean, like I said on that, and I want to impress, we can always improve on it. The person administering the medication has to be educated. And you're right, that's the big part that comes back, the reasons why. There's no harm in asking, why do you need the epinephrine? Because that's part of the education, which is what I think that you're hitting on. Pardon me for speaking on your behalf. That's what I'm understanding. But it doesn't have to be it. I mean, it's okay to ask, but also leave it as unknown. We don't know.
I guess I'm a little puzzled. Is this? I was. What is the purpose of this protocol? And I thought this was for patients who need to get epinephrine and have it on hand because they have an allergy. But the yeah, but is for folks who are in a position, who are employed somewhere and are in a position that they may have come across somebody who needs epinephrine. That's a different scenario. So I'm a little puzzled, I guess.
I didn't want to speak out of turn. Looks like another committee member has their hands up, so please.
Yeah, Committee Member Wickenhagen.
Thanks, Committee Member Wickenhagen. So I think I'm under the assumption that we're going to bill insurance, or that pharmacy is going to bill insurance. And if there isn't an indication, I would be concerned that they won't reimburse. But
And then to answer both right there, the committee member Myers question, it's purposely being built broad enough that it covers both that individual patient. So I'm trying to add some clarity here. To be able to address that individual patient, as also being able to help the civil worker that should be able to be trained to be able to use it, and for the pharmacist to be able to educate and have that person have the ability to administer it. So it's actually both. And then committee member Wickenhagen, couldn't agree more with you. That was an oversight that I hadn't thought of because, quite frankly, I don't deal a lot with insurance agencies, but you are correct. So I guess I would come full circle after all of this to say we should ask, which is we should ask, fully knowing that sometimes the answer to it might be, well, it's not for me. I don't know exactly when I'll be using it for anaphylaxis, but we should be asking the question. Did I add any clarity, or did I muddy the waters worse? Apologies.
Staff Member Onion, I have a couple thoughts on that. What if we kept it as is, but put some disclaimer in there, perhaps in the form of optional in parentheses afterward? So we encourage individuals to ask, but the question itself doesn't become prohibitive in that it would create a barrier to someone obtaining epinephrine if they didn't answer the question appropriately, or they didn't want to divulge the information, or they were unsure. That's the committee's opinion on that. And then I might make the same conjecture about medical conditions. I think hypertension was mentioned, and of course, as a vasoconstrictor, epinephrine is going to increase the blood pressure. So would there be certain instances where that would change the landscape of patient counseling? And if so, do we trust pharmacists to cover that in the counseling and screening for health conditions? They're probably going to ask anyway. So back to the question as to whether or not the medical condition should be taken off there. I might reconsider that in that specific instance. If someone had a history of cardiovascular disease, previous history of, stroke, etc., do we trust the pharmacist to cover that in counseling without having the medical conditions listed on the chart there? And then the third thing is, I'm not aware of any scenarios working in retail for years recently where I had a rejected claim for epinephrine where a diagnosis code wasn't included. In fact, a lot of times they weren't included at all. There are, of course, some instances where diagnosis codes are included. That tends to be, items recently I can think of, like all of your GLP-1 agonists. So I'm not aware of any instances where there was an insurance rejection. due to a lack of diagnosis code. Not saying it doesn't happen, but I think that would be in a minority of instances there. Thank you.
This committee member Gibler, as far as I know, there's only one indication for epi, and that's anaphylaxis. And so that's why insurances aren't asking, and that's why I'm not sure why we need to ask what it's for, but we can. And the second of all, there's no contraindications to epinephrine. In a medical emergency, you administer it whether they have hypertension or not. You're not going to be asking them what their latest blood pressure reading is. So it's just, we're just trying to streamline this. I would like to streamline as much as possible. If it's not going to affect the decision we make, whether it's going to be administered or even prescribed, I don't think we need to know.
Committee member Virgin.
Yes, this is committee member Virgin. I might recommend when we list known allergies, I think there are many patients with very many that don't meet the criteria, and that maybe instead making a statement, history of anaphylaxis, yes, no, to specific allergen, and then unknown may meet our need around confirming a diagnosis if it's known.
Will this committee member Gibler, will that prevent a pharmacist? If a pharmacist says, I don't know, this meets my standard for criteria for epinephrine, I won't prescribe this.
Because there's an awkward silence, I'm going to give my 2 cents on this, which is I agree with committee member Giblin on this one, which is when a person goes down, there's no contraindication. If they have anaphylaxis, it's administered. Even if they have angle closure glaucoma, which we know is a contraindication with, but you got to save a life. And so this would be something that I don't think it necessarily needs to be asked on it. If they're having an anaphylaxis use on it and they receive that training on it, then that's fine. I think the reason why these are listed here is because these are the questions that we always ask, right? These are the questions that are just seem universal. And I think the intent here is to gather as much information as possible. But now what we're doing right now is we're trying to refine it and trying to lessen the workload going on it. And I can completely respect that. I think that medical conditions don't necessarily need to be asked in recognition of trying to simplify the form and simplify the amount of questions asked. My 2 cents.
This is committee member Sellers. And I agree. I think striking as much as we can. Right now we have that first allergy line struck. We have breastfeeding. We're going to switch pounds and kilograms around to be consistent. We don't need to know the medical conditions. We don't need to know the current medications. We do need to ask allergies, right, to have something in the record, especially if this is a newer patient. And I do think that the reason for requesting epinephrine can certainly make that medication counseling more personalized, and have a better dialogue with that patient and their family, if that's who you're educating. So I like the current proposal. Does anybody have any recommendations to changes in the boxes that we've already discussed? Doctors Myers and Virgin, are you guys okay with how the allergies question is being asked? Do you feel like that pharmacist is going to have enough information to adequately educate and prescribe?
Committee Member Virgin, I am satisfied.
Committee Member Myers, I am as well.
Okay. All right. Do you want to continue walking us through the rest of the form, Smee, Crystal?
Sure. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
So next question, we're almost to the end here. Have you been previously prescribed epinephrine auto-injection? And as we go through the additional forms, the idea behind this question is that if we have someone coming in requesting epinephrine for themselves that's never been prescribed epinephrine before and they're the end user, then the pharmacist should be referring them to their primary care provider. So we would want to see if they'd had a prescription in the past, and then also note when that prescription was provided. In the next document, we'll see that if a prescription is greater than 24 months old, or if they haven't been prescribed it for the last 2 years, then we would refer them as well. But obviously, if it was an entity or the end user was unknown, then we would not know if they had been previously prescribed that medication. And then last question, have you used your epinephrine auto-injector in the past 12 months? I'm not sure if this is something that we want to strike out or not. The thought behind this question was it's not going to be preventing the pharmacist from prescribing epinephrine, but it could provide a more personalized conversation if the patient did have to use their epinephrine auto-injector. The pharmacist could provide some more education or counseling regarding allergy prevention in the future. But again, it's not going to dictate if they prescribe EpiPen or not. And then just moving towards the bottom. So questions, concerns, please list additional questions or concerns you might have regarding your visit. This may or may not be needed. I'll let the committee kind of discuss that, but it's not going to impact our ability to prescribe epinephrine. And then the patient's just going to sign, date, and then the pharmacist will use document 3, which we will go over shortly. So this is just really an attestation for the pharmacist to verify that they use the stepwise protocol to verify that there were no referral criteria, or if there was referral criteria, they're documenting what that was.
Smee Sharp, this is Committee Member Gibler. Just clerical, just under allergies back up on the screening. I've noticed the other questions have unknown and unknown end user and unknown. Maybe you could just add unknown end user unknown as another option under that one section for consistency.
Thank you.
Committee Member Sellers, the question about have you used the auto injector in the past 12 months, if that's not going to be a barrier to prescribing, can we perhaps get rid of that? I think it's a good point just to sort of see their familiarity with it. Hopefully they're not overly familiar, of course, but does that work for everybody else?
I mean, this is Committee Member Gibler. The question's also being asked about any questions or concerns that they have. And that also fills in a lot of context that I think we're seeking with that question. Have you used your Epi in the last 12 months? Either way, we're getting at having a more personalized conversation with the patient. Do we need both? Maybe not.
This is Smee Robnut. I like this question. And the reason why I like this question, it really prompts and brings forward in the pharmacist's head that might be prescribing this. I mean, regardless of whether the patient has had this medication in the last 12 months, you should still be teaching them the same thing, and you should still be taking it with the same level of severity. But what this really brings forward is this person uses this medication and they have had issues regarding it. And it may invite more questions that the pharmacist might bring forward to that patient, such as, oh, so what reactions have you had? And it may help that pharmacist be able to assist that patient in why they are having those reactions. Now, it might be clearly noted, and they should be seeing the doctor at that point. But the point of the issue is, I think what this does is it really clearly emphasizes that this patient uses it often. Now, I agree. I still like this question, but I'm not against having it removed. I understand the reason why it's there.
And that's you're talking, this committee member Gibler, if they haven't used in the last 12 months, then they have an epi at home probably that shows an expiration date, and that leads maybe, since isn't the prescription good for 12 months? I'm not sure. Anyway, it leads that conversation about what do you do with your old epi pens that are sitting around the house. In our case, we keep them, but that's probably not legal, or can't legally counsel on keeping them.
Yeah, that's recorded. I'm sorry, Andrew. But I'm not against having this kept. Struck. I just understand the reason why it was asked. I would really like to hear from some of the other committee members regarding their thoughts on this particular question.
This is committee member Sellers. I'm fine keeping it. I was just, again, trying to go back to the whole slimming the form down a bit, but we've done quite a bit of that already. So I do agree with some of the points brought up about guiding the discussion and personalizing the education. Any other thoughts from anybody?
Yeah, this is committee member Virgin. I like the idea of keeping it only because it might change the instructions around, how did that work for you? What were your barriers? It just adds depth to the conversation in a meaningful way for the patient.
All right, Smee, Crystal, and Rob, do you guys want to continue going through the form with us for the next section?
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
All right, so this is document 3, the assessment and treatment care pathway. So we're really using that patient intake form that we just discussed. Pharmacist is going through each of these steps and then assessing the answers that were provided. So we'll just start out with step 1. So question, who is a medication end user? So again, they can indicate as themselves, a known end user, such as a child, or an unknown end user. Whatever they select, none of these are going to be a referral criteria. The pharmacist can provide a prescription to the patient, but I think it really gives them some insight as to how to tailor that education. But basically, they will proceed to step 2. I think step 2 here, we can strike out breastfeeding since we removed that from the previous document. But basically, we are assessing the patient's weight, and we'll also likely need to switch kilograms and pounds just to keep it consistent. But we will be referring anyone that is pregnant or any child that weighs less than 15 kilograms or less than 33 pounds. So that is step 2. If they do not meet any of the referral criteria, then we'll proceed to step 3. So step 3, since we removed the medical conditions from document 2, I believe that we could remove that here as well. Yeah. And then, so step 4, known allergies. So I think we can reword that just to be synonymous with the second document that we reviewed, but essentially they're obviously going to have allergies if they are the known user. So that is not a referral criteria. They'll proceed to the next step. I think we can remove current medication since we removed that from document 2. All right. So step 6, have you been previously prescribed epinephrine? I would like to remove auto injection just because since we have Neffy now on the market, who knows what else will be added on the market in the future. We can just say epinephrine. But we will either have the patient attest to receiving the prescription, or if they have received the prescription at that specific pharmacy, then we can document it ourselves. But the idea here is that they would be referred if the patient is requesting for themselves or a known end user, and they basically haven't seen their doctor for some time to get a new prescription, and that they may have been prescribed the medication, more than 2 years ago. Sorry, 1 second here. Okay, and then also, sorry, just to finish up with step 6. So if a patient is requesting for themselves and they are unaware if they've been prescribed epinephrine, they would need a referral. Or if they are requesting for a known end user, such as a child, and they don't know if they've been prescribed epinephrine before, then they would also be referred. So essentially the only situation where it would be appropriate to provide a prescription for somebody who is not sure if they've received epinephrine before is if the end user is unknown. And then step 7, have you used your epinephrine? If we could remove auto injector there, please. In the past 12 months, again, that was just really to tailor the educational/counseling piece, but that is not going to dictate if we can provide a prescription or not. All right, does anyone have any additional things that they caught, any questions or insight about this document?
Staff member Runyon, another super quick and annoying comment, which I'm known for. Under number 2, the referral criteria, the unknown, should that be end user less than 15 kilograms? I think the less than or equal to there should just be less than, because over in the right, it says weight less than 15 kilograms or 33 pounds. And then above, of course, we can prescribe it if they are 15 to 30. So I think the referral criteria should say less than 15 instead of less than or equal to. Does that make sense? Or am I correct?
No, thank you so much for having such good eyes. Yes, if we could adjust that as to how you described, that would be great.
This is committee member Sellers. Going back up to that intake form, sorry, I know that was document number 2, but that one also says auto injector. Do you want to just make it consistent and say, have you used your epinephrine in the last 12 months rather than calling that out specifically?
Yes, thank you for catching that.
All right, are we done with this document? Crystal, you ready for the next document?
Yes. Okay, so this document 4, is just a prescription template that the pharmacy may use. It's not required, but it can be helpful if they don't have their own prescription form that they want to use. So we have some just basic demographic information that you guys can see. And then we have also put patient weight. I think that's important since the medication's based on weight. If we could swap pounds, kilograms to make it consistent with the rest of the document, that would be great. Okay. So if anyone, I just want to start, if anyone has any insight into making this look more streamlined or more visually appealing, I am open to that. Because as how it stands right now, it's a little chunky, but basically, this table is split up into two main groups based on weight. So we have the 15 to 30 kilograms, and then we have the 30 plus kilograms. So based on what patient population we are dealing with, we'll select either one. And then each section is broken up. So when I was putting this together, I was just reviewing, what epinephrine products are currently on the market. So we have AuviQ, we have just your regular epinephrine auto injector, and then we have Simjepi, which all of those are basically auto injectors. As we mentioned before, Neffy is the new intranasal epinephrine product that was just approved, I believe, last month. So that is also included. And then the last component, I think with a lot of these protocols, if there's one small change or addition to what products are available on the market, we're constantly revising. And in aims of not having to do that, I wanted to have an other section where if a new product does come on the market, that the pharmacist is able to provide that if it is an FDA approved epinephrine device, which is indicated for anaphylaxis treatment. So if you guys want to go line by line, I'm more than happy to do that, but that's the basic overview of this document.
Committee Member Gibler.
Just a couple of comments. Simjepi is misspelled here. It's Symjepi.
M as in Mary or N as in Nancy? Sorry. SYM.
Mary, yeah.
Oh, okay. Look proper now.
We'll likely have to fix both of those. Thank you.
Okay.
There's no M though. It's just Symjepi. Simjepi.
Okay.
My other comments are on plain language and the use, trying to utilize plain language and the directions for use whenever possible. So when you have an unknown user, for people to know what their anterolateral aspect of their mid-thigh is might be difficult to understand. So I would, and then the use of naris or nares or nares as well. So if we could just, is there another way to describe this portion of the outside mid-thigh would be helpful to replace that simpler language.
This is Committee Member Virgin. I would recommend language simplification as well. For the area highlighted, I would probably recommend upper inner.
Staff member running. I think it's upper outer that we all yeah.
It's lateral.
Apologies, yes.
And then I have one other thing from the community pharmacist perspective. I've seen many a thought spiral or existential crisis from the fact that we get prescriptions for epinephrine, the EpiPens that say number 2, and then we're like, is it number 2 as in one box is 2 auto injectors, so it's just 1, 2 means 1, or is it 2 boxes of 2, which equals 4? So in other words, I don't know if there's any value to putting a unit beside the number. So number blank pens or number blank boxes. I'm just seeing that happen more than once.
I agree with Gary. I think that is something that I've been seeing a lot more lately in the community setting of it being unknown if it's 2 boxes versus 2 pens. So I do know a lot of the pharmacies would not break a box. So I think just putting, number, space, box would be probably the easiest, unless if someone else has a different opinion on that.
Smee, Rob, you had your hand up.
Yeah. What I wanted to say on this one is I really appreciate Crystal putting this together. But this is one of the, and so I'm sorry, Crystal, on this one, but this is one of those areas that I, as a pharmacist, I love to have examples to look at. But there's always a danger in putting stuff together like this because it can become dated. Because as new stuff comes on the market or things slightly change and pharmacists reference these examples, that's great, but it really needs to be emphasized that this is an example. And because we don't normally use forms like this. We use our own forms to incorporate into whatever company you're working for or agency you're working for or whatever. So this, I think, should be taken as, and it's great, all these changes that are being suggested with simpler language and the box issues and so on and so forth. But quite frankly, as a pharmacist, I'm going to be probably not even using this form. I'm going to be using my own, and I'm going to be writing it as I want to, based off of the protocol that she's already listed, the prescription criteria, the algorithm. So I think that should be taken with a grain of salt as well. Truly has value to show as an example, but it should be seen just as that.
So this is committee member Sellers. What I'm hearing proposed is that we make a space for blank doses or blank boxes if we're going to keep this particular example. Also simplifying language so that we're using, the real words for our patients. There was a comment about the NARES and how that the NEFI instructions were replaced. Does somebody have a better wording that they'd like to recommend for that?
Well, just as it's written, this committee member Gibbler seems a little bit repetitive. Administer NEPI into one nostril, pointing straight into the nostril. I mean, if you want, say that. And then I would just say, just right above it, upper outer portion or of the mid thigh instead of upper outer of the mid thigh. And my last comment, I'm sorry, I have so many comments. I love to order things in ways that are the most utilized part is up on top, and so I'd love to see if the people over 66 pounds can be up on top, and then the kids can be right below. But maybe most epi is administered to children, so maybe I'm wrong on that. I just don't want it to be someone to accidentally underdose an adult because it's just right there on the top.
I know that my heaviest use is always with adults. So, and I like that perspective that you're stating, that you're bringing forward, probably at the top.
I'm glad to know most of your patients are adults.
Well, OYA is not necessarily,
okay.
They're still above 15 kilograms, but for heaven's sakes.
Okay, committee member Sellers, we have consensus? We need 4 or more. Did we get that? I'm sorry, I was typing while you guys were discussing that. So what's on the table right now is flipping these around to have this at the top and the children at the bottom, correct?
That is correct. Does anybody object to that? I'm not hearing any negatives. Do I need to have positives instead, Rachel?
Nope, good. And then
I
just
love it.
for
There you go.
just for my own clarity, I'm going to these amendments we made up here, I'm going to do the exact same thing down here. Correct? Because I think they were duplicates, right, Crystal? I'm just going to make
Yeah,
everything.
they're exactly the same.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Just make a note to fix these.
Committee
Okay.
Member Myers.
Going back to the question about the number, I would love doses. That's just takes away any confusion about pens, about boxes. You know, as a physician, I often don't know how much is in what you guys get. I think doses is clear.
This is Committee Member Sellers. I also like that.
I love it. There we go. There's your positive.
All right. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just say, Crystal, is there anything else at the bottom of this document we need to discuss or?
No, not necessarily. So I already mentioned with the other box that basically it would just be any FDA-approved epinephrine device indicated for anaphylaxis treatment, which likely it would be indicated for that. And then in the NEFI prescribing information and their PI, they do state that the patient is or it's only been approved for 4 and up. So I did just make that noted as I know that it's a new product. So yeah, that's it.
One more is the provider fax. This is our last one, right? This one.
Yes. And this one is very, very similar to the prescription form. So I think any edits that we have made in that table will likely just carry over. But basically, this document is just a notification to the patient's provider if they have a provider, informing them that they did receive the prescription at the pharmacy. I think a lot of our other protocols follow the same suit. So we have patient's demographic information, just a blurb saying your patient was seen at our pharmacy on this date for non-acute anaphylaxis. Treatment. I don't know if treatment's the right word. We could maybe change that to for a non-acute anaphylaxis prescription, just so it's not inferred that they had anaphylaxis potentially. But just saying that, you know, we did provide a prescription. This table is exactly the same as what was on the prescription form. And then there's a space for if epinephrine was not provided at our pharmacy because they had a referral criteria, we would provide that referral criteria so that the provider could assess them more. And I don't know if this OAR is current or not, but that may need to be updated as well. So.
This is staff member Melvin too, and I'm just going to flip these boxes so the adult is at the top and the children is at the bottom, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I will amend this. This is old too. Okay.
This is Committee Member Sellers. Does anybody have any last minute questions, concerns, proposed alterations to this protocol? Hearing none, is there a motion to move to recommend the non-acute anaphylaxis statewide drug therapy management protocol version 4 2025 as revised to the Oregon Board of Pharmacy for review?
This is Committee Member Anderson. I so move.
Committee Member Gibler, second.
All right, we will do roll call. Committee Member Anderson.
Approve.
Committee Member Gibler.
Approve.
Committee Member Hammond.
Approve.
Committee Member Myers.
Approve.
Committee Member Sellers approves. Committee Member Virgin.
Approved.
Committee Member Wickenhagen.
Approved.
Great. So this motion passes unanimously. And we are now moving on to discuss the draft standard vaccination protocols with Staff Member Runyon. These are referring to mailings B, B1, B2, and B3. Staff
Thank
Member
you.
Runyon, would you like to take the floor?
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Staff Member Runyon. Before I get into these, I just wanted to say thanks to Crystal and Rob for putting that together. I thought that protocol was beautiful, and I'll be, in as much as I can, encouraging everyone to use it. There's a lot of good work put in there, and I appreciate the discourse involved in that too. Like I say, we don't always have to agree, but we can always agree to treat each other with kindness and respect. And so I appreciate, all of that was displayed throughout the conversations there. And I think it'll provide immense value, out in the community and save some lives. So, I commend everyone for their participation in that. So what we have now are just the universal protocols, kind of at board direction. And so we'll pull one of these up. There are only a couple of differences between all four. You can do the 18 and up if you want. Okay. And that's primarily just the age range that's mentioned in each of them, and then the corresponding set of vaccines that are age appropriate. So the reason we're doing this is to create kind of a more agile approach where the process itself and the vaccine protocol are streamlined in such a way that we're able to make updates in a more consistent, congruent way with less lag time in between, emerging updated guidelines and what our protocols say. And then there's two components to the universal protocols we have: a static element and then a fluid element. So the static element are kind of the backbone of the protocol that's been lifted from our previous, treatment pathway. Will provide enough consistency so that we can ensure patients are receiving the same standard of care. And then the fluid element is, are those elements that are going to be changed in response to emerging guidelines that are updated, and then, the age ranges themselves. So it's kind of this good equilibrium between a static element or a good structure, and then the fluid element that we can just change in response to anything we need to. So what we have here, I think we've already gone through some of this, and I know it sounds like some of you have tried to go through this and have done so successfully, indicating that the references there are adequate in the event that pharmacists need additional information to make any decisions in terms of assessment, vaccine selection, needle selection, administration processes, etc. So we have the references listed up top, and then for all of the protocols, we have the age range, and then all of the vaccines that are indicated for that age range. And of course, one thing I'll mention, or actually two, we will put the versions beside these as previously mentioned. I think this was just copied from our website under the PHPFAC tab. And then the other thing, we're going to refer them to the ACIP guidelines. So we look at pneumococcal vaccines, for example. I think the most recent ACIP guidelines that were updated, I think November from the October meeting, I think it says 19 and up now. So even though this is an 18 and up protocol, of course, if you're going back to, or they're referring to the ACIP guidelines, that age range within this protocol would be stratified or identified there. So I don't see any concern with that. So we'll go down further. And then we have just some basic information, again, listed from our previous treatment pathway for this one, with references back to the rules and in terms of training and certifications. And then here's a part that I want to bring up for discussion. So we have an intern mentioned here, and essentially this subset talks about the delegation of tasks, and specifically with reference to technicians. So technicians can, under the supervision, direction, and control of pharmacists, administer vaccines to patients 7 and up. So, and Angie might get you to weigh in on this. We might want to change the language here with some of the other protocols, the 6 months through 2 years, and then the 3 through 6 years of age, because the technicians technically wouldn't be able to administer the vaccines, and that's in our rules that are mentioned there in Division 125 and 0305. So I'm not sure, we can discuss that and make those amendments, either on the back end or here in real time. I just wouldn't want someone to read this in the 3 through 6 years protocol and then say, okay, it says a technician can give the vaccine here, even though it does refer them to the rules. I try not to assume people always go to the rules and read them in their entirety. So I'm not sure if we should address that or how. But we can move on and discuss that in a moment if you want. And then we have the steps of the treatment care pathway here. And there's not much that, it's fairly straightforward. I don't think there's much that needs further explication there. So just basic screening tools, assessment tools, and then some guidelines for selecting the appropriate vaccine, administering it, counseling. We have the alert system that's mentioned there in terms of reporting. We have the vaccine information sheets that are mentioned there as well. It's a requirement. And then what to do after. One thing I'll point out in step 5, and I'm not sure how we want to word this. If I'm not mistaken, we have monitor a patient for 15 minutes. If they've had a previous history of anaphylaxis, either to the vaccine that's being selected or to something else, I think the monitoring period that's recommended there is 30 minutes. So we probably want to address that here. I'm open to, of course, the wording on that. And, I look forward to others' input on that. And again, stressing this is kind of it's like a concept car, if you will. This is not meant to be a finished product. It's more the concept, not only of the protocol itself, but the process as well, that we're, looking at sending to the board. But yeah, open to any suggestions there. And I will turn it over to committee member Sellers.
Yes, thank you. So you brought up a couple of different points. The most recent one being monitoring patients for a period of time. This would be with every vaccine then?
So just so you're aware, I just took that from the, I believe it's in the existing language that was in the standard. Let me double check, but I just took it from what was already there. So let me tell you where I found it.
Because I don't know anybody making people wait after they get their flu vaccine.
Yeah, so it might not be necessary. I just literally let me find it. Where's the standard? Sorry, it always takes me a minute to find them. Go to the PHPFAC.
Angie, we can pull it up as well.
Oh yeah, if you want to do that too, that's great. I believe it was in the standard protocol for all vaccines. I wouldn't have come up with 15 minutes on my own. Oh yeah, it's in there. It says step 5 follow-up, monitor patient for 15 minutes after administration of vaccines for signs and symptoms.
This one. I think it's
This is committee member Anderson. Do we happen to know if that is ACIP guidelines or if we just added that? Kind of curious.
I'm not sure what the process was for when this was well, it looks like it was last updated in June of last year. So
no, I meant like, is this like what are monitoring suggestions in ACIP guidelines is what I'm curious about. Like, did this get added into our protocols because we put it there, or did we put it there because it was a recommendation from ACIP? I'm wondering if this, yeah, I'm wondering if our SME, Crystal, do you happen to know? Is Crystal still here?
I'm not sure if she's still not on the call, and I don't
Oh,
remember
bummer.
can't remember if she was
Okay.
involved in this. So committee member Anderson, we may have to look into the history and get back to you because we have all the
Okay.
prior versions. I am failing to remember
Sorry.
as well. I bet
I'll
board
try
member
and
Kirk-
do a
board
quick
member Kirk
search
Bragg
on
would-
my own too to find out whether or not it's even in ACIP or not.
Oh, the CDC mentions 15 minutes as most adverse reactions occur within 15 minutes. Are you referring to the 15 minutes or the 30 minutes?
Both, just a time period in general. I think there was a comment put in by Rachel that asked if it was supposed to be 30, and Angela is saying that she pulled that from our previous adverse reaction protocol.
Yeah, this
So,
Actually, it's from the standard protocol for all vaccines, not the adverse reaction.
oh, sorry. Yeah.
It's okay. Yeah. I'm not sure what the adverse reaction one says, if it says something different, but it should be the same. Regardless, we should have the same amount of time. They should be this. So if we need to change that one down to 15 minutes, or if we need to remove it, whatever.
Staff
This
member
is
Runyon.
committee-
Go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead, staff member Runyon.
I have something that I included in the chat. And this is interim considerations preparing for potential management of anaphylaxis after COVID-19 vaccination, or is it specific to COVID-19 here? It's on the official CDC page, and it says, additionally, to monitor for allergic reactions, providers should consider observing people with the following precautions to a previously administered COVID-19 vaccine for 30 minutes if a subsequent dose of the same vaccine type is administered. And it goes into talking about people who've had a non-severe allergy to a component of the vaccine, or they've had a history of non-severe immediate allergic reaction after administration of a previous dose of the vaccine. So it is a CDC recommendation specific to the COVID-19 vaccine that I pulled up here, but I've seen it recommended elsewhere. So just for your consideration there.
This is committee member Sellers. Would it be possible to change that and not put a defined time down and just reference the particular vaccine recommendation by ACIP or CDC?
Yeah, I think you could just change it to monitor patient pursuant to recommended guidance.
Do other committee members feel differently?
No, this committee member Gibler, I agree. Just remove the 15 minutes. It's pretty standard across a lot of CDC references I'm seeing, and it's easy to find. But there's some different for COVID. I remember doing this during the big mass vaccine events, if asking them about this and just asking them to wait for 30 minutes, but I don't remember that with any other vaccines.
Am I striking the language in the paren? I just want to make sure I have this. So we're keeping what's in paren. Pursuant to recommended guidance for signs and symptoms. Okay.
We need an N paren on that.
Yes,
So-
we do.
Yeah.
Not there.
Oh, sorry, wrong place. It would end. Yeah, there. At reactions.
Let me see what it was on the.
This committee member Virgin, do we need to reference ACIP? For the
We
guidance?
can, if that's what you want it to be specific to. Yeah.
I don't think you need parentheses at all in this sentence.
Yeah, it might have been just a carryover from a copy and paste. I apologize.
And this is committee member Sellers. I appreciate the mentioning of ASIP, but isn't that mentioned elsewhere in the protocol? And my only concern is sort of as we're in some tumultuous times in terms of what agencies are providing guidance and potentially the integrity of the guidance with which they're providing. Do we want to pigeonhole at this point?
This is committee member Anderson. I think since we have to have the version history piece of things, I think we'll be okay, just because we can always say that at the time that we approved this, the version that we did approve it for is what we're going off of. And if there are problems, hopefully the board is able to pull up their versions. And I know that Gary had previously put in like into the chat previously that CDC does have an area for older versions, but even that I would worry about because CDC has that history of where things just disappeared from their website. So hopefully there is still an ability for the board to like have, you know, some copies of what those are in case of emergency to be able to post on their website what the versions are that are expected to be used.
So the board can't post them on their website, but the board has copies of them in the office because there's copyright rules about that we can link things, but there's copyright rules around us being able to post them on our website. So, but we have copies in the office.
I'm actually a little bit curious. I know this is maybe a tangent, but there were a day or two where the CDC took down vaccine information sheets that are required by law for pharmacists to give. What does the board do in that case when like a document is expected to be used but is no longer available on the link that it says it should be in? Does that make sense? Like what do we do legally for that? Like what are pharmacists supposed to be able to do?
Can you get, sorry, I don't know if you're asking me, but but are you meaning like, I don't know what like document that would be? Like, I mean, you mean like the actual recommendations themselves?
No, it's called a vaccine information sheet. We actually do reference it in these guidelines themselves, but it's not just us. It's also, yeah, it's right there. In fact, the third bullet down in step 4, it says provide patient with current patient education and
Oh, yeah,
vaccine
those, yep.
information statement, BISs, and answer any questions prior to administering vaccines. Those disappeared from the CDC's website for a time period. And I remember it was like a lot of pharmacists freaking out over the fact that they couldn't get them from the CDC at least. And there were people like providing like alternate places to try and get them, but I'm just curious like legally what the board does in that situation where the people that are supposed to have those are no longer providing them. And
So I mean, so in theory, I would think that people should have them downloaded. Like, I mean, I guess, I mean, it's like that's not like sort of like, I can give you like ideas of like what people should do to prevent it from being an issue in the future. I don't know what the board would do. I can't, you know, speak to what they would do if they got a case where like it came up that somebody didn't hand out this thing, if they would enforce the discipline or if they would, you know, I mean, that would be sort of like up to the board to look at. And I don't know if board staff already downloads these things and if we have copies of these in the office. I don't know, but that would be sort of a what would you have to like, it's one of those things where you have to kind of like address it when it came up, if it came up as a
complaint. I get that. I think the only reason I'm bringing this up right now is because of the very real potential and possibility that these guidelines disappear again in the future, particularly for vaccines.
Staffing Runyon, I've got a site up, immunize.org now that has the VISs in PDF form. So those wouldn't be, of course, contingent upon the CDC site being operative, if you will. And it looks like they have some archived or historical versions as well. So as to what the board would do, I couldn't speak to that, but it seems as though there are archived versions, both current and historical, from additional sites that pharmacists could reasonably have access to. Of course, I understand that some community pharmacies don't necessarily have internet access, and the tabs or the browsers are restricted. So I think they would evaluate that on an individual basis, but it does seem like there are other, operative options in terms of procuring that required information, even if the primary source, the website for the primary sources are down.
Committee Member Emerson, this is Committee Member Melvin. So one of my other duties here at Pharmacy Board is maintaining our website, and I have been maintaining it for the last 8 years. So we have a tool that we use that helps me find broken links. So in this case, I pulled this up just so you could see as an example. Due to the situation that's currently happening at CDC, like every day, this changes, right? So when the link is broken, I have already gone through and I have in the background already done the work on all of our current protocols. There are some broken links that are still currently removed. However, this one that you guys are discussing, it is hyperlinked into our document. And when you open it, they've created a redirect, if you can see this, right? So this is, anyone in the world has access to this. So what's happening is the URL has changed. So what I typically do is when the URL changes is I just amend it with the proper, so it's pointing to the proper place. But there's also a tab right here where you can download these. And again, for these references, that's typically what we do is keep these URLs or download the information if it's offered, and we keep it in our records retention system.
Great,
Does that help?
thank you. Yes, it does. Sorry to go on a little bit of a tangent there.
Sorry, where was the 30-minute coming from? Where it was 30? I didn't see it in the adverse reaction one.
This is Committee Member Gibler. I'm still searching for where that comes from, and I haven't been able to find it during this conversation. And I certainly can't find anything under ACIP guidance. So I see it under CDC web pages where you wait 15 minutes. But I would like to remove ACIP from that where it's highlighted there and just refer back to our own standard vaccination protocol for managing adverse events. Unless someone has can point to a resource that says otherwise, I'm not sure where.
This is Committee Member Sellers. I'm 99% sure that it was from the initial COVID vaccine release, right?
Right.
And it was just applicable to those. And they have changed and removed and done so many things with that information access that I'm not surprised you can't find it. But I don't think it's applicable anymore. And I do think that if we just reference sort of what the recommended guidance is per vaccine, that would guide the pharmacist to know when to hold folks there.
Yeah, I like
For
what's written
observation.
here right now. This is Committee Member Gibler. So thank you.
There was another point brought up previously by Staff Member Runyon. It was toward the top. Do you mind scrolling up a little bit more? I can't remember what it is. Oh, the tech intern and tech.
Yeah.
I would like to propose removing text from the protocols that are under 7. If that's what the rules say, can we just get rid of that line and keep the pharmacy interns in those?
Under 7. So the 3 through 6 and the 6 through 2, we will strike.
And is it in the rule? Is it in the tech rule that says it's 7 and up?
Yeah, I believe it's the reference is linked there. Division 125 could be in 0305. We could probably click that and look at it.
Yeah, I thought I looked at all those, but I was doing it fast.
Right here.
Just technician and the 6 months to 2 years, and then the 3 through 6 years.
Okay. So I'm in the 3 through 6. So I'm going to strike technician here.
And we can try and pull that up, Angie, if you need to.
Oh yeah, I see it. It says, okay, perform the physical act of administering vaccines under the supervision of an appropriately trained and qualified pharmacist to a person who is 7 years age or older, to a person who is at least 3 years of age when. So they can do it on the 3. The governor declares a state of a public emergency, or the public health director. So yeah, we can just make sure we have it on the right ones. We can make that change before it goes back to the board for sure.
But this is what I had. Okay.
Staff member running, and then we could add those vaccines that we previously discussed in terms of the emergency vaccines, and then the ones that aren't on there, like monkeypox, one for dengue fever, chikungunya, and tick-borne encephalitis. If we want to do that in real time. Or I can just make a note to add those after the conclusion of the meeting.
Rachel, that wouldn't come off of this because this is 18 and up.
No, I'm on the 6 months to 2 years.
Oh,
I just did the 2 children, the
Gotcha.
lower age group ones.
Gotcha.
Right? And that was
Yep.
it for these. Okay. Let me get out of these to make sure we're not confusing everyone. Here's our 18 and older.
This is committee member Sellers. I support staff member Runyon's proposal to add the emergency vaccinations preemptively. If others do.
This is committee member Anderson. I am in agreement with that as well. Do we need to be specific with the names? So saying, like anthrax and trying to remember all of the others.
Dengue, chikungunya.
So I think the way that we drafted the motion language, proposed motion language, was any CDC recommended vaccine not currently on the list.
Ooh, I like that. Let's do that.
Okay. Unless you would like me to open any of the other sample protocols. Up to you, committee, what you would like to do next. Need to review anything?
Committee member Sellers, would folks like to actually go through each one and double check, or are you okay with the proposed revisions?
This is committee member Virgin. I would move forward with the amendments as proposed instead of going through each line by line.
Committee member Gibler, I agree.
Right. So is there a motion to move to send the standard vaccine protocol process to the board as revised?
Committee member Virgin, so moved.
Committee member Gibler, second.
All right, we'll do the roll call vote now. Committee member Anderson.
Approve.
Committee member Gibler.
Approve.
Committee member Hammond.
Approve.
Committee Member Myers.
Approved.
Committee Member Sellers approves. Committee Member Virgin.
Approved.
Committee Member Wickenhagen.
Approve.
All right, and so this motion passes. Rachel, you sent me another.
Yes, so we'll need to now read that one.
Okay, so I have an additional motion. Is there a motion to move to recommend to the board that they add any CDC recommended vaccines currently not in rule to this protocol?
So that's basically the adding all the CDC recommended vaccines that are not currently, like how we were just saying, like the ones
The
that are right.
Right, the
So does
emergency
this need a
ones, monkeypox, all of that.
We just added the verbiage that says anything not in and that covers it though, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay,
we don't need to.
we don't need to do this then?
No,
a
oh, I'm
separate-
sorry. I'm sorry. We do need, yeah. I think it's just good to tell the board that you are good with them. You're providing the advice to them that they do add all of those additional vaccine types.
So
Okay,
your
if we
advice
need
is-
to,
Sorry, go ahead, Committee Member Anderson.
I was just gonna say, I'm happy to make that as its own separate motion. That
Yeah,
works.
that's the motion she just called for.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I so move.
Can I have a second?
Committee Member Gibler seconds.
All right. So we'll go through a roll call vote, which is essentially, again, put in the document as well. But Committee Member Anderson,
Approve.
Committee Member Gibler,
Approve.
Committee Member Hammond,
Approve.
Committee Member Myers,
Approved.
Committee Member Sellers approves, Committee Member Virgin,
Approved.
Committee Member Wickenhagen.
Approved.
All right, this motion passes. We are now into the public comment area. Rachel, do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
Nobody signed up today.
All right, so do I need to read this statement?
You do not.
Okay. All right. That is all that we have on our agenda. Is there a motion to move to adjourn this meeting at 12:07 p.m.?
Committee Member Gibler, so move.
And a second?
Committee Member Myers, second.
All right, well, we will do a roll call. Committee Member Anderson,
Approve.
Committee Member Gibler,
Approve.
Committee Member Hammond,
Approve.
Committee Member Myers,
Approve.
Committee Member Sellers approves, Committee Member Virgin,
Approved.
Committee Member Wickenhagen.
Approved.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. Looks like our next scheduled PFAC meeting is on October 22nd, 2025.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Byers. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Rachel,
Yes.
is there anything that I need to do?
There is nothing.